Our invitation, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you to start for us with the service.
Amen. Good evening, everybody. Let's go to the Lord in prayer. Father God, here we are once again. We thank you for another opportunity to be together. Father, we ask you to bless us on this Republican Party. Father, we ask you to bless us on one speaker. We thank you for what you've done and what you're going to do. And Lord, when you show us the call and all the answer, we ask for a place like you. Or we can have that and praise your name forever. This is our prayer in Jesus Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Hello everyone, I'm Rhonda Anderson and I am the Senate District 1 SREC Committee Woman. Welcome to the event today and thank you for coming out. We really appreciate your time on a Saturday. I just want to take a couple minutes and recognize some elected officials, if you don't mind. We have from House District 2, State Representative Ryan Slayton. And we have Senator Bob Hall. Everyone knows Bob Hall. And we have some special guests today from our Court of Appeals. We have from the 12th Court is Justice Gregg. From the 6th Court of Appeals, we have Scott Stevens. And from the 188th Court, we have Scott Noby. You guys met Jill. She's my fellow SREC Committee woman. We have our President of the Republican Women's Club, Nancy Holly. And being talked to by Christy Antonik is our own Louis Gomert. And we have our County Chairman, Brian Bowden. And we have the Republican Women of Harrison County, Donna Filyaw. You guys settle down back there. Did I miss anyone? Oh, Michelle Gamboa, you're not an elected official. Yes. But she probably will be one day, so just watch for that. We have David Stein from Smith County. He's the county chair. And then we have Harrison County Chairman Lee Lester. I think I covered everyone. So just thank you for coming again. There's waters up there on the bar area. There's some giveaway stuff. And we will like to start the program by inviting our National Anthem singer, Tori Wells. Tori is from Wascom High School. She's in the 9th grade. And she performs all around Senate District 1, singing the National Anthem. And I found her via her mom on Facebook, so thank you, April. But please give a warm welcome to Tori Wells. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight. Oh, the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets echoed, the bombs bursting in This time we'd like to do the U.S. pledge. Brian Bowden, would you join us up here and lead us with that, please?
The little flag over there.
Oh.
Which one do you? Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Troy, are we going to do the
Midges.
Texas?
Jill can sing it.
You want to do it now or?
Jill can sing it for us.
Where's Michelle? Michelle, do the Texas pledge. I know you know it.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
At this time, I'd like to invite up Jill Glover. She's going to be our MC for the event. Jill, come on up.
Thank you, Rhonda. It is great to be in East Texas. I was born and raised in Palestine, so this is my home stomping grounds. Actually, my first job was here in Longview, but that was a very long time ago. I'm so thankful that all of y'all came out this afternoon. How many of you were delegates to the state convention? Oh, that is awesome. All right. So most everybody is familiar with where we get our legislative priorities. But for those of you who don't know, I'm going to just really quickly give you a quick rundown. Our legislative priorities for the Republican Party of Texas start at the local level. And so it starts in the precincts, and you can attend a precinct convention at the end of the day when the primary elections occur. So that evening, you go to your precincts, and you get to submit what we call resolutions on issues that matter to you. Those resolutions then make their way up to the county or Senate district conventions, and then they go all the way up to the state convention. And we have a legislative priorities committee at state convention that goes through literally thousands of resolutions across the state that get submitted. And this past summer, our committee picked 15 top issues that they felt like mattered most to our Republican delegates. So our delegates got to rank those, and we chose the top 8 to be the legislative priorities that we're going to focus on this legislative session. Now, just because an issue didn't make this top 8 doesn't mean that it's important. And we found that out in a great big way just a few weeks ago when we had an issue with our electrical grid, right? How many of you were out of water? Yep, a few, and I'm going to guess pretty much everybody lost electricity for some point during that. Or, no, you guys are in a separate area, right? Oh, that's right. Y'all are the fortunate ones in the state. Well, Senator Bob Hall has been sounding the alarm for years about the grid system for the rest of us. And so we experienced a failure of electricity, and certainly that is an important legislative priority this time around. However, today we're going to be focusing on the top 8. So I am the chair of the Legislative Priorities Committee for the State Republican Executive Committee, and what my committee is charged with doing is making sure that we advocate for these priorities and that we do our best to get our elected officials to pass legislation regarding these priorities. So today, you know what? I'm going to do a quick little giveaway because Troy gave me some stuff. Who can name our first legislative priority? Yes, ma'am. Election integrity. You win. I'm going to give you this gift for a reason. Open it up real quick, and I want you to show everybody what it is. These legislative priorities were chosen last summer. We had no idea last summer how important election integrity was going to be, right? And it turned out to be number 1. And we have have an election stolen from us on a national level, right? And so we must, even at our state level, we must have good legislation to ensure our elections are fair. Because I don't know about you, but we can't do anything else. There you go, Trump. We can't do anything else if we don't have fair elections, right? I mean, none of the rest of the priorities are going to matter if we can't get conservative people elected to office. All right, so we have got 8 speakers today on each of the priorities, and I'm going to go ahead and ask our very first speaker to get ready, and that is going to be Brian Hughes. Oh, no, Brian Hughes.
Chuck.
It's going to be Chuck, my partner. Yes, Brian Hughes was an Echo because he's down working in Austin because he's got some committee meetings on Monday. So Chuck, I'm going to ask you to come in just 1 second, but I do want to say to you, all across the state, and I've been speaking on our legislative priorities all across the state. There is a common theme. People are angry and are realizing the predicament our country is in, right? I have been saying, we are not at the edge of the cliff. We are over the cliff, hurtling for totalitarianism, right? And I don't know about you, but 4 years ago, I never would have dreamed even that we would be in a predicament that we are in today. And so these legislative priorities, they're not just kind of random or they're not just important. These things are critical. As I said earlier, if we don't have good elections, what use is the rest? But guys, we have aborted 60 million babies. Mr. Potato Head is no longer a Mr., right? I just read yesterday where California is considering a school curriculum that includes children chanting to Aztec gods. My goodness, where on earth has our country gone? Right? We're spiraling into craziness. And sometimes I feel like I'm in the twilight zone, and I'm sure you do too. However, we do have some things that you can do, and it's regarding these legislative priorities. You can make a difference. You can engage with your elected officials. You can call them, you can email them, and we're going to give you the tools to do that today. And we're going to tell you how. And one of the first things you need to know is why they matter and how to talk about them. So each of our speakers is going to give you some talking points, some information, so that you can articulate well why these things are important. So Chuck, I'm going to let you come up and talk a little bit about election activity.
I'll warn you up front, I'm hard of hearing. My extra ears are over there, so hopefully if you ask questions, I can hear the questions. I'm Chuck Blankenship. I grew up in Texarkana, went to school at Baylor and University of Texas Medical School in San Antonio. I was in the Navy 38 years as a general surgeon, and the last 25 years of my career was in Washington, D.C., where I had quite education experience of how our government does not work and how it works for itself. I became involved with the Republican Party when I retired in 2011. And this is my first go-around with the SRDC, but I've given up all of my other volunteer jobs to do this full time because to me, this election coming up is going to be socialism versus return to our government, public government. And I don't want my children and my grandchildren to not have the same opportunities I had growing up. So the first integrity, number one, is election integrity. Connie Roberts in Houston is SRC person who's head of that subcommittee. And what we do is we look at the different bills in the file relating to the elections, how you register, how you prove your citizenship, how the elections are conducted. What I want to cover right now, yesterday was the last day that the bills were filed, and there were 1 million bills filed, and a ton of bills have been filed on election integrity. I found out today that if you don't read through these bills in detail, There are things hidden in these bills that have nothing to do with what we want the integrity to have. Let me give you an example. One of the bills that was filed in election integrity has a statement in the middle of the bill that the governor will have the authority to direct the Secretary of State to determine how elections are done. That was a big issue in the last election nationally. And now we're putting a statement into a bill that will allow us to do the same thing. And it's dead set against our Constitution. And that's what I found out today is I really have to read these bills in detail because what's in the very beginning of the bill sometimes has nothing to do with what the center part of it has. And the only way that we're going to get things to happen has to start at the grassroots level and has to start with you. I will pass out some sheets in a minute where you can put your name and email address, and I've got a ton of information that will help you learn how to use the Texas legislature online and how to get into STATS, which is the Strategic Texans Against Strategic Activists for Texas. And that's through the Texas GOP site. And I've got all of that information where I can email it to you. It gives references to a video that Gregg Malone, who's in charge of Gun Owners of America, put on YouTube that will walk you through how to use this site. Anybody can get on these sites. Anybody can participate. You yourself have the option of
Oh, that was you? Okay. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. You should be fine. Jill turned her mic on. Yeah, you're good. Jill turned her mic on. You're good. You're good, Chuck. Yes.
Okay, all right. That's what you have to get involved. You can go directly to the legislature. Is it still living? No. Using both of these sites, you can get involved in the STAT group. You can select which election or which priority you want to participate in. You can put input into the committee where you can participate. And it's not going to happen unless you get involved. Anybody know what HR1 is? That's in the Senate. And just quickly, it requires internet-only voter registration and the requirement to provide a full Social Security number for registration, provide nationwide voter registration, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It completely is out of context with our Constitution. And if we don't get involved and contact groups and court and tell them to get moving, I was disappointed because Senator Cornyn last week voted to approve to do Attorney General who was an anti-gun guy. We need to get after him. If you know people in other states, contact them and have them contact their senators. But it's going to take a movement like that for us to get involved. And that's basically it for election integrity.
Thank you, Chuck. I appreciate it. One quick thing I did tell you earlier. You may wonder how it is that the SREC and the RPT decide on certain bills to support. We are charged with looking at pieces of legislation that match our priority language. So at the state convention, our delegates have said there's certain bills and there's a certain way that the bill needs to be written to match whatever this issue is, right? And so there are lots and lots of bills filed, and there may be lots of really good bills filed, but we don't support every single bill that has to do with, for example, election integrity. Our committee, each of our subcommittees, or each priority, looks at those bills that are filed and then sees if it matches the way the delegates have written the priority. And if it does, then we, as the party, support that bill, right? And so I just want to point that out because sometimes there's some really good bills that you may want to support individually or that we would support individually, but if it doesn't meet the priority the way that it's written, then the Legislative Priorities Committee can't say this is going to be an approved bill. So I just wanted to let you know that. Sometimes people will say, well, how come you guys aren't supporting Texas bills, right? And so what we would say is, you know what, we absolutely think that the voters deserve to be able to vote on Texas if they want to do that. That's really important. But because that's not one of the legislative priorities that our delegates gave us, then we can't put that forward. So I just wanted to let you guys know that. All right, one of my favorite colleagues on the SRAC is Pastor Stephen Roden, and he is going to come and talk very fittingly because he is a pastor on the legislative piece. Pastor Roden.
Thank you, Jill. Well, hello, Patriots. It's good to be with you this afternoon. And I do have to leave right after I'm done to head back to Dallas to get ready for my sermon to be rested from that. We spring forward, right? It's always a challenge. But I want to talk to us about religious liberty. And one of the things that I think that we all understand is that America was founded on a religious-based heritage of liberty under law. And the Constitution was written to limit the government, not the people.
Man, right there. Right. Let me say that again because we need to understand this as we go forward and knowing the kind of challenges that we're facing. America was founded upon a religious-based heritage of liberty. Our Judeo-Christian ethic is responsible for the kind of successes that we've enjoyed as a nation. America is great because of that ethic, and it has framed our view of who we are and how we are to conduct ourselves in light of that truth, of those truths that are found within the Holy Writ, the Word of God. And so we're challenged now because as we sit here today, there are two bullets that are aimed at two areas of our existence as a nation that will ultimately determine who we are and the success that we will continue to enjoy or not. One is aimed at the Constitution. The Constitution in America is dying a death of 1,000 cuts. And the other is our religious liberty. That those two ideas run interference with those who are seeking to undermine our very way of life and living. And to replace our Judeo-Christian ethic with a human secularism that is devoid of the divine, that does not respect or consider a divine perspective on life and living whatsoever. And the question is, how did we get here? How are we at this point in our nation's history that which is responsible for the kind of successes that we've had and have handed down to our posterity is now in jeopardy? How did that happen to us? And I submit to you it happened gradually and incrementally over time. There is a philosophy that is ultimately driving us away from those founding principles. That philosophy is founded in what is called social justice. Social justice is undergirded by an idea that was formed that is called cultural Marxism. Cultural Marxism is not the same as economic Marxism. How many of you know that there's a distinction between the two? Economic deals with the economy, money. Cultural Marxism deals with the way we practice our faith, our relationship with one another, and how we conduct ourselves. Culture. And that cultural Marxism came into existence in 1929 out of a school called the Frankfurt School in Germany by one called Antonio Gramsci, who said that we will never defeat the West through economic Marxism. We must change who they are by changing those institutions that influence them. Every major institution in America that influences us now is under the directive and under the influence of cultural Marxism. And there are six of them I want to list for you right now. Corporations and businesses. Right now, they are governing what we do and what is acceptable and unacceptable in the marketplace. Education. Our schools are indoctrinating our children with a philosophy that is antithetical to everything that you grew up on and know to be true and right. I call them Luciferian laboratories of indoctrination. Our children are supporting socialism. Young people are. Major media. I don't need to convince you of that. Major media is an influencer of our culture, and they are changing the way we think. They determine what we think and what's important and what is not important. Our government. The largest caucus in the House of Representatives are socialists. Did you know that? And they are legislating out of a socialistic paradigm, changing the way we think. The next institution is the church. The church in America has been marginalized and has been reduced and mitigated in its influence, both from without and within. There are pastors who no longer believe that the Word of God is the inerrant, infallible truth given to us by God Himself. 66 books, 40 different authors, communicated to us by God. How many of you believe that? Every hand didn't go up. But that's another reason why we're seeing the kind of confusion that we see in America today. And then finally, the family. The family, the one institution that God created that is the place through which we communicate our relationship with Him, demonstrate that relationship through how we relate to one another, has capitulated to social Marxism. We're in the mess now because families have not stood up and pushed back, because they have bought into what is called political correctness. Political correctness is just another name for cultural Marxism. And we're too busy playing PC instead of submitting to BC, biblical correctness, and God knows CC is out the window, constitutional correctness in America. We are in trouble because we as a nation have been silently watching our country go to hell in a handbasket because we have bought into what is called the American dream. And the American dream has blinded us to the reality of the threat that we're facing because we're too busy running behind trying to get a 6-figure salary, 3 weeks vacation, and the biggest boat that we can have to go out on the ocean or lake and vote and fish. And those who hate us are running the nation. And those who we elect to go represent us are so intimidated by who they are that they are afraid to even say the word socialism on television. How many times have you heard Hannity say that on television? Not many.
So we're in trouble. I want to share a couple of ideas with you. I don't know what my time is like, but I'm going to take as much time as, no, I won't do that. There are two bills right now that I think that will ultimately change America right now, and they're being pushed through the House and headed towards the Senate. It's already passed in the House, H.R. 1, already passed. That is the federalization of the election process in America. And what they're codifying, men and women, is codifying the fraud and the corruption that took place in November. They're making it legal. It is unconstitutional for them to federalize our election process. Where is the outrage? Why aren't we hearing from our elected officials who represent us standing up on television or in any platform that they can get and say this is unconstitutional? We must not support this. Amen. That's the kind of resistance that we don't see right now. We don't see it. And I'm extremely disappointed with those who we elected from the state of Texas to represent us in Washington, D.C. Where is the voice against this madness? The second piece of legislation that's coming our way is the Equality Act that will forever change who we are. You know what the Equality Act is? Let me tell you what that is. The Equality Act will make the homosexual agenda in America and the homosexual a protected class. A protected class. Here's how the language starts on that particular legislation. To prohibit discrimination on the basis of sex, gender identity, and sexual orientation, and for other purposes. Red flag should be all over that, right? What is the other purposes? That's the open door to legalizing pedophilia. That's what that is. That's the open door for legalizing sex between men and animals. That's what that is. To prohibit discrimination on the basis of sex, gender identity. Hello? What is that? That's men pretending to be women and women pretending to be men. We call that gender dysphoria. That's craziness. That's like me standing up here and telling you I'm a 1965 Ford Mustang. Park me in the garage. What's the difference? What's the difference? Same thing. You say I'm lunatic for saying that. I say a man standing up and saying he's a woman is a lunatic. Come on, somebody. But it gets worse than that. Section 1107 claims this. Listen. The Religious Freedom Restoration Act of 1993 shall not provide a claim concerning or a defense to claim under a covered title or provide the basis for challenging the application or enforcement of the covered title. In other words, our rights as religious, to practice our faith and our religion has just been nullified. Did you hear that? It will not be the basis through which you can stand up and say, I will not hire a homosexual to come in here and run my daycare center. Under the new Equality Act, you can't do that without punitive consequences. America will forever change if H.R. 1 passes all the way through and Joe Biden signs it, and the Equality Act passes all the way through and he signs it. America is done. Do you hear me? That's the kind of threat that we're facing right now. And I'm not sure that all of us as America recognize the intensity of the threat that we're facing. Because if we recognize it, we would be out in the streets protesting. So we're standing in the way of these people accomplishing their goal, but they have found a way to circumvent our liberties and our freedom, quiet our elected officials, the ones that we love and trust, who are silent and are saying nothing, at least not in a way that people are recognizing the urgency of the hour. And the question, my friends, is why is this happening to us? Why is it happening? It's more than us allowing it. We can be deceived. The Bible says, see to it that no one takes you captive through philosophy and empty deception. Meaning you have to be on guard. And if you don't have the spiritual capacity to do that, and all you peripheral Christians, you don't have the ability to see and to discern. I'm sorry, you just don't have it. You need to be rightly connected with God in order to see and know what's happening. And too many of us have a cultural Christianity that is not biblically based. I'm getting ready to get in trouble here. One more. Hold on, I got to share this with you. All right, this present window of opportunity. I want to share with you what David Rockefeller said, and then I want to share with you another quote from one called Mr. Chisholm. Here's what David Rockefeller says, and I think it sets forth what we're facing here, brothers and sisters. This present window of opportunity, during which a truly peaceful and interdependent world order might be built, will not be open too long. We are on the verge of a global transformation. All we need is the right major crises, and the nation, that is America, will accept the new world order. Does that sound familiar to anybody in here as a Christian? That talks about a global world order. He says we are poised to get that. All we need is the right major crises, COVID-19, and most Americans will accept whatever we tell them to do, put a mask on, social distance, all that other stuff that has absolutely nothing to do with fighting this flu. But we're being duped, and they know it. Here's something I just got to share this with you. I'm sorry if I'm taking a little longer than usual, but I want to share this with you. This is from a gentleman who wrote back in the 1940s. And a lot of what's happening to us, men and women, is not something that just started overnight. I mean, this has been coming at us for a number of years. How many of you heard of the Fabian Socialist Society? That's the turn from the 19th century to the 20th century, and they had socialism on their mind, and where they parked their effort was with the power elite, our educators, our college professors, and they convinced them that socialism is the best system for America. And they've been coming after us ever since. And it doesn't happen overnight. It's been coming slowly but surely. We're like the old frog sitting in the pot. And now the water is just about at boiling. And we're getting ready to go under. Now listen to what this guy said. This is the most frightening thing that I've read. Here's what this man said. To achieve world government, it is necessary to remove from the minds of men their individualism, loyalty to family traditions, national patriotism, and religious dogma. He said it is necessary for us to do that. Who is he talking to? The power elite. He's telling them how to handle and manage the hoi polloi, the crowd, in order to manipulate and to maneuver them where we want them to go. We've got to destroy their sense of family, individualism, and patriotism. That sounds like Joseph Stalin. You know what Joseph Stalin says? America will fall if we can destroy them in these three areas. Their patriotism, their spirituality, and there was one other. Patriotism, spirituality, and their religious belief system. He says if we can destroy them in those three areas, America will collapse from within. Am I the only one hearing collapse around here? It's collapsing. I dare you to stand up and wear your flag at work, or go in and say, I'm a proud patriot. Your boss will tell you, shut up, sit down, don't you say that here or you lose your job. Huh? Spirituality. Look at our kids. None of them want to go to church on Sunday. They'd rather sit at home and watch television, like many of us are doing, by the way. The spirituality in America is dying. We don't go to church. The church influence has been negated in America. They laugh at you if you stand up and say, I believe in God and the Bible, and I don't believe that the earth was created after billions and billions of years. Say that and see how people laugh at you. Well, the science, I don't give a rip what the science say. What did God say? The reinterpretation and eventually the eradication of the concept of right and wrong, which has been the basis of child rearing, the substitute of an intellectual and rational thinking of faith in the certainty of the old people, that's us. These are the belated objectives of practically all effective psychotherapy. You are a guinea pig being played on by these people to change you. And our religious liberty is in trouble. If they can kill religious liberty and the Constitution, they got us. There's a man by the name of Eric Klautz. He is the president of the World Economic Forum. Here's what he says. We are poised for a global reset. We are poised for a global reset. We need to change the economy using COVID, and we will go into a new world order. When did he say that? Last year. What was he hoping for? After COVID comes on the scene, we're going to change it. Men and women, the election was stolen right from underneath us. And every major institution that had anything to do about changing it didn't do a thing about it. Do you think that was incidental or accidental? It wasn't. It's by design. The one thing that could stop it is us. The Constitution says this, and I'm going to stop. The Declaration of Independence says this. In order to secure these rights, governments were formed, were created. But when governments become destructive to that end, it is the right of the governed to alter or abolish it. Now, that's the kind of talk that needs to be happening right now. Because this government has, listen to me, this government has proven to us, all three branches, that they don't give a rip about what you feel or think. They're going to do what they're going to do. I think it was Thomas Jefferson that said this, that every now and then the tree of liberty must be watered with the blood of patriots and tyrants. Our religion is in trouble, but you hold the key. You. What will you do about it? Thank you for listening. God bless you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Pastor Broden. Now you know why I love this man. He tells the truth. Thank you, sir. This is the perfect lead-in to our third priority. What Pastor Broden talked about happening at the national level, especially with the Equality Act, affects our children and affects the rest of us, even in terms of our identity. I'm a licensed professional counselor, and in 30 years, I have never seen the craziness in the medical profession and in my profession when it comes to this particular issue. I bet probably most of you, probably 4 years ago, maybe even 3 years ago, never dreamed that we would be talking about gender modification or sex transition as a legislative priority for the Republican Party of Texas, right? So last session, I went to a rally at the Capitol and I heard a man speak, and I honestly didn't quite believe him. I could not believe that our judges and counselors and medical personnel would actually allow a little boy, and he was, I think, 6 at the time, a little boy to be in a process of transitioning from a male to a female. I thought there is just no way. Well, you know what? It's happening, and it is not just happening to this one child. It is happening to thousands of kids across the state of Texas. We know that at least 500 are in treatment programs at Cook Children's Hospital in Dallas and Houston. We know that there are more gender pediatric transition clinics for kids, pediatric clinics across the nation than there are adult transition clinics. Why is that? It's money. There's a ton of money to be made in the pharmaceutical industry and in the medical industry and in the counseling industry in treating these kids. And you know what? When you get them as a kid, then you've got a patient for life. So it's an income stream. This is hideous. It is hideous. And we must stand, as Pastor Broden said. So you know what? Our delegates said this must stop. This child abuse must stop. Our priority reads, abolish the following practices for minors: intervention to prevent natural progression of puberty, administration of opposite-sex hormones, and performance of any type of gender reassignment surgery. And if our elected officials in Austin cannot pass this bill this session and our governor cannot sign it, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know, I have no hope for our state, honestly. This particular piece of legislation to protect our children. So the man I heard at the rally is here today, and I would like to introduce you to my friend, Mr. Jeff Younger.
Well, I want to put you in my shoes. So this is the first iPhone video I ever took, and I want you to listen to this and think if you were a father whose wife had just filed for divorce and your child had just turned 3, and you're just in a new house 1 mile up the road, and this happens. Can we hear it? That's my boy James. He's just passed his 3rd birthday. Can't hear it? Okay. This is him, yeah. All right. So this is him telling me, Mommy says I'm a girl. So you all have your iPhones. Get on your iPhone and search for Mommy says I'm a girl, and this will come up. It got about 2.5 million views on YouTube. Puts me in dresses. She paints my nails. But she taught him that he had a girl's brain and a boy's body. And that's what they teach these kids. The public schools in Coppell, Texas are teaching him the same thing right now. And I've been through the entire administrative appeal process, and I can't get them to stop doing it. So it is really happening. You know, I love following Pastor Broden, except that he takes all my time. The most important thing to know about this is judges aren't going to stop it. I'm not sure what happened in the last 30, 40 years, but our judges just aren't stopping things. Our judges, Republican judges, have decided that they're academics, that they're some kind of impartial, stand apart from the fray. They almost take pleasure in overruling their own side. So I've had Republican judges and I've had Democrat judges. I had a judge recused by Coons Fuller, the most powerful family law firm in Texas, gives more in donations to judges than any other entity from what I can tell. My judge prohibited me, in temporary orders, which are not appealable, from teaching my son that he was a boy. The judge prevented me from teaching him Christian teachings about male and female. That's in the order. My judge prohibited me from using male pronouns for my son in public, from introducing him as a boy to other people in public. And after I showed this video to a psychologist, an execrable man named Blake Mitchell, who's part of this cabal of psychologists who do custody evaluations in family court in Dallas County, I showed this video to him. He said that I had made a false accusation that my ex-wife was tampering with my son's gender identity, even after he saw this. And they took my kid away from me and gave him to her. Okay? He's about to turn 9. She's kept him in a dress and has taught him that he's a girl. Now keep in mind, here's the situation you're in as a dad here. The mother tells him he's a girl. His teacher tells him he's a girl. His teacher even gave him a dress when I took him to school as a boy. Principal says he's a girl. Police officer at school says he's a girl. Librarian says he's a girl. Lunch lady says he's a girl. All his authority figures say he's a girl except me. For a long time, he didn't believe me. I think now he still has some doubts about it. So we went to another psychologist who recommended that he be transitioned at 7. It's in the medical record. We showed the court that my ex-wife planned with a married lesbian gender counselor in Dallas named Rebecca Orr, Rainbow Counseling, down in Oak Lawn in Dallas. And they planned to, quote unquote, consider the medical side of treatment when my son was 8. And now what that medical side means is they put him on puberty blockers. Why do they put him on puberty blockers? Because 80-90% of these kids just turn into normal boys and girls if you just wait. The cure for gender dysphoria is puberty. That's why they have to block it. So they block puberty. About a year later, they'll put them on cross-sex hormones, and that will permanently sterilize the child. Their skeletons will never grow properly, and so forth. Now, I have a hearing on the 29th of this month. I've been under a continuous lawsuit now for 6 years. I've spent a little bit over $1 million trying to protect that boy because our damn judges won't do the right thing. They will not do the right thing. We need laws to tell judges what to do on this issue. We can't even trust our own side on this. I'm going to tell you something else. I like what Pastor Broden said. We got to start speaking up about this. We got to do more than that. We need active disobedience to unconstitutional laws. And it's going to take some people, having some consequences. So I'm going to tell you something with me right now. I'm under a gag order. And this gag order prohibits me from talking about political topics to my fellow citizens. That's what kind of scummy judges we have in Texas. It bars me from talking about transgender issues with my fellow citizens. I cannot talk about LGBT issues with my fellow citizens. I'm not allowed to tell you that that is a boy. That is illegal for me. Yep. So I have my lawyer, my lawyer is a good country Texas lawyer. He's an honest man, 3-generation law firm. I love him almost like he's a member of my family. But he does not understand me. I don't follow unconstitutional laws. And neither should you. So I had the judge, my previous judge, the one who was accused, asked me, are you following the gag order? And I said, the constitutional parts I'm following and the unconstitutional parts I'm breaking every damn day. My lawyer has a writ of habeas corpus. I ask you to prosecute, please, I want a criminal contempt prosecution. I want to take my writ of habeas corpus to the Supreme Court of Texas and limit your damn court from doing this again. And they never did it. Well, I'm going to have that discussion again on 29th. Because I'm not following these unconstitutional gag orders. I have a right to petition the government for redress of grievances, to protect my son, and to work with my fellow citizens to do it, and they can't stop me. And Texas has one of the best anti-SLAPP statutes on the books. Judges cannot interfere with the exercise of my civil rights, and I'm not going to let them. Now, being a judge is hard work, okay? Because, you know, these, no offense to the legislatures here, Slayton, don't come up here and kick my butt now. But these legislators write these laws, and then these judges get these ambiguous things, and they got these situations in local context. It's not an easy job. I sound anti-judge. I'm not. What I'm saying is judges are afraid of this issue. They don't want to rule on this issue because the gay mafia is going to come straight for them. And if you know anything about the gay mafia, it's the worst. So we have got to have laws that protect judges and make them do the right thing. So we have two bills. HB 68 is my favorite. It has the least chance of success. Isn't that the way it always works? You got champagne taste and beer pocketbook? So HB 68 simply classifies sex change surgeries on minors as child abuse. Now that solves a lot of problems you may not have thought of, things that I've had to contemplate. For example, it's already come up in court. When they took him to the Genesis clinic, yeah, that's what they call the gender change clinic for kids, the Genesis clinic. And they like to humiliate us with our holy names of our holy books. So they took him to the Genesis clinic. The court's official position is that was medical child support, and I got to pay for it. Well, do I look like the kind of guy who's going to do that? Yeah, I'm not going to do that. So the nice thing about HB 68 is that it's not possible for a judge to order child support for child abuse. It solves just a whole bunch of problems that you think of. Then there's HB 1399, which really goes after the doctors and says that they can't perform these surgeries. You have a complex set of statutes there that block them from doing it, and then take they have special immunities from lawsuits, which is actually crazy because it doesn't only apply to their medical practice, but even to like car accidents and things. I don't know who wrote that statute, probably a doctor. So that is going to be another bill, and this is the same thing we faced in the last session. So Bob Hall is the only legislator that tried to propose legislation for this in the previous session. Think about that. The only one. Think about it. Think about that for a second. And he doesn't like me talking about this, but there's some people pretty high up that literally lied and betrayed him to keep him from bringing an amendment on the floor to get a public vote on it. I mean, there were some powerful people that did not want that to happen. Those people are still up there. I call them the triumvirate of terribleness up there. They're still there, and they are going to block this bill. One of the things they did is they sent both the bills to the same committee in an attempt to defeat them all in one go. They sent it to a milquetoast Republican committee, just full of rhinos. It's like a zoo. You know, you want to throw hay on the ground, let them eat it. It's got a wishy-washy chairman, chair lady, wishy-washy, very susceptible to attacks from the gay mafia. Last year, they literally had a gay riot in the juvenile committee. There were 100 transvestites showed up. They couldn't establish order and take a vote, and we missed the deadline. And nobody went on a record. Wasn't that convenient? And the other thing is that the left plays smart and we play dumb. We still think politics is a debate. Well, that hasn't been the case since the 1970s. So let me tell you how these laws were defeated in Idaho and Wyoming and Utah. Because Republican-controlled states have actually voted these bills down. Idaho, I know, I got family up there. Don't know why they left Texas. Immigration, I don't like it. So the Idaho government is controlled completely by Republicans, House, Senate, and the judiciary. Okay? Governor, everything. So the House passed a bill outlawing sex change surgeries on children. Very simple. One paragraph bill just outlaws it. Flat out says you can't do it. Goes to the Senate, and the Senate votes it down. And they voted to allow sex change surgeries on minors. These are Republicans. Never got to the governor. Governor wanted to sign it. How did that happen? That was peculiar. I went up and studied this. I talked to senators. I talked to senators up there that voted for it and against it. I talked to the media. I talked to Democrats. And I even attended a meeting of the Human Rights Campaign and got thrown out. So these people are so smart. They build these gender clinics. And it costs about $100 million, $300 million if they're going to do the surgeries there. They go out into every district, every major Senate district in Idaho, and get local banks that are donors on the hook for loans to those clinics. So when the time came to vote, all those banks said, no, we don't want those loans to go bad, and all those senators voted for that, voted it down. They're going to play those same dirty tricks here. Okay? So the only way to overcome that, I call that the Chamber of Commerce wing of the Republican Party. They want open borders, sex change surgeries on kids, everything. And they give a lot of money to the Republican Party. The only way you can overcome that is you have to go and talk to your elected officials. Now, they like to talk to me because I'm clear. I've been doing this for 5 years. I kind of have my story straight. But they really want to talk to you because you vote for them. Do you know that when one of you shows up to talk in person, they tally it as 10,000? Because 10,000 have the same views you do, they just don't show up. When you email them, it's 100. When you call them, it's 1,000. Because a lot of people think the way you do, they're just not going to take the trouble to email. These things really matter. So I ask you to go out to the Public Health Committee on the Texas House website. Get your friends in those districts to write, call, and visit those people and tell them that they'd better pass that bill. Because I got to tell you, there's nothing less morally ambiguous than this. Let me tell you what, in my trial, so I had to retain the top experts in the transgender medical field. Okay, it cost me $200,000 to get them down to Dallas. They deployed the top pro-transgender experts. We had a lady named Johanna Olson Kennedy. Oh, y'all need to really Google her. These whack jobs are out there, and she's the largest recipient of federal money for this stuff. So there's a couple little gems we got in our deposition of her. It was so bad that they didn't put a single one of their experts on trial. That's how bad these depositions were. They didn't put any of their experts in front of the jury. She had personally referred over 250 prepubescent girls for total mastectomies. Now that's last year alone. She refused to tell us how many boys she had referred for actual castration. That's removal of the penis and the testicles. Well, we now know that it's over 400 in Texas last year alone. And that's happening at Children's Hospital. Don't give money to Children's Hospital. Happened at Children's Hospital in Dallas. The Houston clinic, we don't know. We don't have anything from them. We didn't get a chance to depose them. I spent a lot of money, I had to have the ability, so I went after those clinics to get discovery. Okay? This is a big problem. In Utah, they're taking kids from parents who won't transition their kids. Anybody remember tomboys? Oh yeah, I grew up with them. They were all my friends. I grew up around Lubbock, Texas. A little bit flatter than over here. Y'all can't see much beyond a mile or two, but we can see 40 miles where I'm from. So a tomboy today, she would absolutely be transitioned. She would be on puberty blockers immediately. My son, they were going to put my son on puberty blockers after one 1-hour appointment. And that's common. You'll hear that. Parents will tell you that all the time. 1 hour appointment, and they're on puberty blockers. Here's the thing. They say that their diagnostic protocol is perfect. So if they put those kids on puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones, 100% of them go on to surgery. They cut their balls off. 100% of them. Now, they say that's because they're perfectly accurate in diagnosing it. What my experts said, these are the men that founded the original transgender clinic at Johns Hopkins in the 1970s, and they shut their clinic down after 4 years because they could prove their treatments were harmful to patients. What my experts said was, actually, no, affirming people in their delusions causes them to persist. If you keep telling your kids Santa Claus exists, he's going to believe it longer. And when you put them on cross-sex hormones, they never go through puberty, which is the very process of identifying with your biological sex. So they block the cure. So that's the thing they do. As early as possible, they will put those kids on puberty blockers, and 100% of them will go on to surgery. They have suicide rates 25 times the national average. Now, I have been attacked by the left. I have been attacked in some cases by the right. I want to tell you kind of what you're going to hear from people who are on the other side of this issue. It's a very clever narrative that goes towards our individualist presuppositions. They will tell you, and this is the Democratic Party came up with this in conjunction with the Chamber of Commerce. They're going to tell you, we don't want the government to intrude on a personal family decision like this. And that plays on your limited government instincts, doesn't it? You feel it tugging at your heart, don't you? I know you do. Let me ask you this. What if you had a family that was tattooing a child's face? Certainly less traumatic than cutting their balls off. Tattoo in their face. CPS would take that child from those parents instantly. Instantly. Okay? There are some things you're not allowed to do because the child has to live with it and they can't give informed consent. That's how you answer that. That's how you answer that in your own mind and your own heart, and how you answer back to these liberals that want to tell you that a conservative has to let a doctor cut the balls off a little kid. Right? So I've given you some of the tactics the other side. I've told you that it's happening. Folks, they didn't pass it the previous session. They still don't want to pass it. They put it in a committee to tank it. I can't do it alone. You know, there's 3 kinds of us in politics. There's guys like Bob Hall, represents Slayton, Louis Gohmert over there taking on the FBI for us. We got fighters. We got people put their fists up and deliver some sharp blows right to their nose. And then there's other people, you know, well, we got to support those fighters. They can't do it on their own. They need money. They need volunteers. They need people to tell them things they don't know. And then you got people that won't do anything. Unfortunately, in Texas, we got too many people who won't do anything. Find somebody to support or fight. Go to the Save James webpage on Facebook. Just go onto Facebook and search for Save James. It's a massive worldwide community. Save James. We know that it has over 250,000 members, but we only see 50,000 because they tamp us down. We've gotten letters from Russia. I've been on Russian television. I've been on Serbian television. I've been on Polish television because I'm Orthodox. I'm an Orthodox Christian. And they think of Texas as a very religious place. They don't understand how this could be happening to an Orthodox boy in ostensibly a Christian state. Okay? Tremendous number of interest from people in Germany, and believe it or not, in China. So you'll see people from all over the place there. And there you can follow everything that's happening. You can even see my court filings. You can see everything they're trying to do to me, strip me of my rights, and you can keep up to date there. And I'm going to be up there with Representative Slayton on Monday. He's spearheading this, and he's doing good work. And we're going to visit all those people on that committee. But I need you to get your friends to call and write them. Thank you.
Thank you. The Legislative Priorities Committee is supporting House Bill 68 and House Bill 1399, and I believe we've got one more from Steve Toth, and I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, but we appreciate those bills. And Senator Hall, you've got one out of the Senate that you filed, is that right? Okay, and I'm sorry, I can't remember. Yes. Yes, 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 okay. This next priority, honestly, is very similar. How many years have Republicans held the governorship and the legislature? Anybody know? Who said 18? Raise your hand. Oh, you're one of our speakers. You don't count. Somebody else. Who said who said 18? You did. Okie dokie. How about you are very welcome. 18 years and we have not abolished abortion in the state of Texas. I'm going to ask my friend Representative Brian Slayton to please come talk to us about that.
Well, good afternoon, and just to tell you, I'm happy to be here. Last time I was in Longview was probably 20-something years ago. I was in college. I had a friend in college that went to Longview High School and came back here. But anyway, I'm happy to be here, happy to speak with y'all. One thing I want to tell you, of course, is something you always hear. You know, we the people, right? That's who controls our government, we the people. And if you go back and look at Aristotle and others, they would say and they would teach that, you know, you don't divide who you are from other issues. You don't compartmentalize, right? Your faith, everything that you believe should be a part of everything you do. And the left's done a good job of trying to get you to compartmentalize things. Like, okay, well, that's okay, that's great. You just think about that over at church. Leave that at that property. Now you're over here at school, or you're here, and we can't talk about those things. And one part of that, also in that thought process that Aristotle and others would teach, is we're going to get the government, the economy, and other things based on who we are. If we are a virtuous people, we're going to have virtuous government, and we will have a virtuous economy. If we are evil, corrupt people, we will have corrupt government, corrupt economy, etc. Right? I mean, do you think corrupt, evil people could make good public policy that's virtuous? No. So what I want to share with you is, this is on us. It's on me, it's on you. What we're looking at. Think about being a child under the age of 18 in America. If you can survive birth or the pregnancy with all the push for abortion, do you know right now there's billboards, the Church of Satan, who, by the way, I filed the bill to abolish abortion, and apparently the head of the Church of Satan's upset with me. So you know you're doing the right thing based on your enemies. And they actually are offering rituals for young ladies to come in and have their abortion as a part of their church. They, right now with COVID, they've ramped up telemedicine. There's young women coming into pregnancy clinics to see if their morning after pill they got through telemedicine, that is illegal, by the way. They're not supposed to issue those, but they're doing it. And they're going into the local pregnancy clinics to see if it worked. They're also offering pills to young women now that says, hey, young lady, if you've stopped having your period, you can take this pill and it'll help kickstart it back in. That's what they're telling them, just deception. So we have that. Then we have what Mr. Younger's going through. Can you believe what we're doing to children? So I say that to go back in a little bit of time in history. Do you know the Romans? They did not value human life. All they really cared about was, are you Roman? Right? And maybe even a little more than that. Christians set themselves apart from the Romans because they would go into the woods, collect the bodies of the babies that were and children that were discarded, the unwanted and they would bury them. And in some cases, find them alive, they'd raise them. Christians set themselves apart from the Romans by protecting and valuing all life. Not the life that the Romans said was valuable, the life that God's Word says is valuable. So I filed this bill, and what it does, people get all caught up and upset about some things with it. But what it mainly does, is it says that an unborn child has the equal rights protection under the law as a born child. That's it. A human being created in God's image that deserves a right to life and to not just be slaughtered. The Supreme Court, I don't really care what they say in Roe versus Wade. They've got it wrong before, correct? Wasn't it the Supreme Court that said that black people were only 3/5 human? They had it wrong then. They have it wrong now. We have to do something now to protect children. One, it's the right thing to do. The government we have, the public policy we have in front of us is on us. We have allowed it to happen. We have. And what we have to decide right now is, how do we want it to end? Do we want to die trying? And that doesn't mean violent. The rest of your life, are you going to stand up for what's right in God's Word and what He believes a human being is? Are you going to do that? Are you going to stand up that God's Word teaches He created man and woman? It's not man's to change. I mean, what are you going to do? Because this is on us. And you've got to decide if you want to die facing the enemy on your feet. Because unfortunately what we have was we have on our side, for whatever reason with Republicans, we're lazy and at times cowards. And we think, oh, well, that's just not that big a deal. Because that's why we have a problem getting this issue brought up in the legislature. It's too uncomfortable. And they're maybe afraid of someone saying something bad about them, or maybe afraid of getting a death threat. Well, there could be worse happen. And, we're not going to change and we're not going to stop abortion without a serious fight. Amen. It's not going to happen on its own. That's the thing you need to realize. If you come to the reality, yes, it's a very hard, difficult subject, and it's wrong. We got to do something. And it's very difficult whenever you say a baby is a full human being that deserves equal protection under the law. It's difficult. But you've got to decide, do I want to do anything about it? And once you do, it's a battle. The left doesn't want this. Think about this. The Church of Satan is upset with me. They're performing religious rituals in abortion with young women. I mean, we have to protect our kids, our grandkids. We have to make sure this place is going to be a great place for our great-grandkids. Because think about 30 years ago. What were our problems we were dealing with? Now we got kids that don't know their gender. And they're trying every way possible to get access to abortion, more and more, and they want to use your tax dollars to do it. I think you're with me, it's not getting better. We are going to have to decide what we are going to do and how we are going to stand up and talk to our legislators. We're going to have to show up. We're going to have to stand up for the unborn. We're going to have to stand up for the born. And if you haven't figured it out, the left probably doesn't want to stop there. The left doesn't want to stop there. They want complete control of everything and of you. And they do not want you to have a biblical worldview and to live your life honoring God. They don't. So my encouragement to you today is there are some that are fighting. There are. It's better than none. Right? Better than some. You think about times in history where a few took a stand and it made a difference. And besides that, even if no one else will fight, will you? Because you are going to have to stand before your Creator. And I, for one, would like to stand in front of my Creator knowing I fought and I died facing the enemy. So thank you all very much.
Yes, sir. A March for Life next Sunday. Oh, go ahead, Seth.
Republican Party has a March for Life next Sunday. That's the 21st, from 2 to 3 o'clock, the Courthouse Square. So take a stand for life. We need our representative to know that we stand for life in East Texas.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And what I want to tell you guys about what I love about Representative Slayton is he shares my mindset. I think representatives should, when they go to Austin, they should think, I got elected for one term, and I'm going to go down there, and I'm going to stand up, and I'm going to throw everything at this job and do the very best I can, and I'm not worried about the next election. And that man back there does that, and I appreciate him so much. And my guess is that's what's going to get him reelected, because he takes a stand. Well, as we know, since Biden was elected, the left is coming for our guns, right? So our next legislative priority is constitutional carry, and County Chair Brian Bowden will come and talk to us about that. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon. It's tough speakers to follow after all that, but I want to recognize a few people real quick. My wife, Mandy, and our youngest daughter, Carson. Also, my executive committee chairs over there. I appreciate them showing up to support. So yes, I'm going to talk about legislative priority number 6, constitutional carry. I'm going to read the definition real quick just so everyone understands when we say constitutional carry, what that really means. It's to restore legal Texas firearm owners' right to carry them openly or concealed without a permit while maintaining the option of a permit for reciprocity purposes. So Stephen Stanley is the sub-chairman or the subcommittee chair for this legislative priority, and he gave me some really good talking points, and I want to mention a few of those. A couple of weeks ago, we had some movement on the constitutional carry priority. To date, there have been 130 bills passed or filed related to all aspects of guns and ammo. Yep, to our constitutional carry Second Amendment rights. A couple of Thursdays ago, constitutional carry HB 1238 by Kyle Biederman was referred to Homeland Security Committee. This is the only bill to date that best meets our legislative priorities as voted on at our convention. We look forward to working with Chairman State Rep James White of the Homeland Security and Public Safety Committee, who is now signed on as joint author. There are also 7 other House members who have signed on as co-authors. So one thing Stephen asked me to mention as well is we appreciate all those from around the state that have stepped up to help our case. The relationship we have with both the GOA, Rachel Malone, and Dr. Blankenship mentioned her earlier, and TXGR, Chris McNutt, has greatly expanded the knowledge of this committee, and we're proud to work with them with our common goal. The GOA of Texas, we have some bills that they have presented that they want that we would support as well. HB 1238, as I said earlier, Biederman and White, HB 1587 plus HB 821 White, HB 1927 Schaefer, HB 2900 Hefner, and SB 540 Springer and Buckingham. So one thing in closing, what I wanted to mention is, like Jill said, President Biden is coming for our guns. He's already made that aware to everyone. He's taxing, if he doesn't come for our guns, he's going to tax our ammo to where we can't afford ammo, and people won't even make ammo. We've already seen gun companies go out of business because they can't support what we've seen. Dick's Sporting Goods stop selling ammunition, stop selling guns. Walmart's the same way. What I was looking at a map here is legal gun owners that can carry a handgun without a permit. And one state that stands out to me that is unbelievable, because Texas we cannot, is Washington State. Texas has to lead the way on constitutional carry. We cannot let a state like Washington or Nevada, Colorado, and all these states can carry openly only where we can't. So we have no permitless carry. So we really need Texas to lead the way in this. And thank you everyone for coming, and thanks for the Republican Party of Texas for being here this week.
Thank you, sir. This next legislative priority, honestly, when I saw it made the top 8, I was a little bit surprised. But the more I think about it, the more I believe it is really, really important. It's monument protection. And what are we told in Scripture? We're told that if we forget our history, right, or that we're not to forget our history, that we are to pass it down to our children. If we have no monuments and no statues, what can the left do, and what are they currently doing? They're rewriting our history, right? And they're teaching our kids something very, very different. So I'm really glad this is one of our legislative priorities, that we must protect our monuments in the state of Texas. And to talk about that, we are going to have Eugene Ralph. Where'd he go? There you are. Come on up, sir.
I'm Eugene Ralph. I'm from Dallas, Texas. I live in Dallas, Texas. I'm originally from New Orleans. I came here to Texas, was a little bit disappointed in some of the things that I saw when I got here, because unfortunately Texas doesn't live up to the hype. That's just the reality. But I'm working to help to change that, to get things back in order. So I'm a precinct chair. Somebody asked me earlier, what is it that I do? Well, I wear a lot of hats. So I decided to put them into categories, because that helps better understand. I'm a minister, I'm a serial entrepreneur, and I'm an activist, okay? So I guess that kind of sums it all up, but there's a lot of things that go into that. And, you know, one of the things that I learned before I came here is that if you know anything about people from Louisiana, by birth we are political animals, and I grew up in New Orleans. So, we just, it's in our blood. We don't have to have people to tell us a whole lot I mean, obviously, people have misconceptions about things just like they do everywhere else. But as far as being involved, and one of the things that struck me was when I first moved here, we moved here in 2005 after Katrina, and for several years I still worked in New Orleans, so I come home on the weekends, and it was a weekend where there was a local election taking place. And when I saw the number of people that actually voted in my district of probably 100,000 people, over 100,000 people in that district, probably I think a total of 1,700 people total cast votes, and that's both sides. And I asked my wife, I was like, what is this? What kind of mess is this? And then I found out that with Texans, it's very common, and they seem to accept the fact that, low single-digit voter turnout in local elections is something that is accepted, and it's not that much better on the state level for the gubernatorial elections. So, 2018 was a little bit of an anomaly, but for the most part, if Texas hits high 20% most of the time in the statewide elections, that's typically kind of high. So we're working to change that. So I'm here to talk about monument protection. This is designed to make all monuments or markers in our state be protected, and they will not be removed, defaced, destroyed, or otherwise dishonored. In particular, specific protections shall be given to the Alamo Cenotaph, which should not be removed from its current location off the Alamo battlefield footprint. Now, in the 2020 Republican primary, 97% of Republicans voted in favor of this bill, that this will become a bill and become legislation in Texas. The reason why we defend this is obviously because we want to protect our history. If people don't know their history, they're bound to repeat it. And you know, I remember a couple of years ago when the whole discussion began with about whether or not, you know, about the Confederate monuments and all these things. You know, when I was growing up, you know, as a kid, and I was, you know, it was General Taylor and General Pershing and all these people, and we had streets named after them and monuments stood. I had no idea who they were, okay? And the average person doesn't know unless they go up to the thing and actually read the plaque on the side of it. So the thing is, we have not really taught history very well. And some of us have suggested that instead of taking monuments down, why don't we add some monuments around those monuments that actually help people understand some of the context of what was taking place at those times in order to help people understand the need to protect our history. Now, the reality beyond that, thank you, the reality beyond that is that we have so many people that do not know our history, and they don't know it, and it's on purpose. Okay, I am I'm deliberately politically incorrect. So if I offend you, turn around, look to the next person. I probably offended them too. So, okay, all right. So the point I'm making is that we have a lot of work to do here, and here in Texas. And you know, I describe myself as being a very highly frustrated individual, but at the same time, I'm a happy warrior. So people have to kind of figure out how do you do that. Well, here's the deal. You've heard the phrase that says, misery loves company. So for people who oppose my viewpoint on anything, don't matter religion, politics, whatever it happens to be, I say, you know, you're an idiot, you make me miserable, and I need some company, so let's go. So, you know, so there's a couple of questions I have for you, and one of them is, you know, in Texas, when we talk about defending the things we believe in, often we talk, you know, I saw this when, you know, several years ago when I first got involved in the politics here in Texas, talking about people have these stickers and they wear the T-shirts, they come and take it. And I realized that, you know, that's like, you know, I dare you to come and take my arms or whatever. I'm like, I'm just kind of one of those people. I'm like, look, you know, I don't ask for trouble, okay? So I'm not going to go and tell people to come and take my arms, okay? But I ask this question. For those who have that attitude and wear those T-shirts and wear those bumper stickers, are you prepared if they come to try to take it? Obviously not. So if you're not prepared if they come and try to take it, I suggest you either stop saying that or get ready in case they try. Because I think at this point, you can bank on it. They're going to try to come and take it. We have too much of a tolerance, those of us on our side, too much of a tolerance for the foolishness that comes from regardless of what direction they come from. Politicians or elected officials do not get better over time. They get worse. There's a rarity. There's people like Bob Hall and Brian Slayton and a few people that may be elected officials in here, and you are an anomaly, okay? You're just like me, a black man who's a conservative Christian in Dallas, okay? I might as well be wearing a unicorn or horn on my head, okay? I'm serious. Think about it, folks. We're talking about protecting liberty here. Are you serious about protecting your liberty? If you're serious about protecting your liberty, one of the first things you got to do is change your attitude about the entire thing. Okay? You need to be the aggressor. Stop asking people why. Why did some idiot make some stupid suggestion or some judge made some bad ruling? I'm not interested in why. Why is irrelevant? It's wrong. Did you ask your kids why they did something wrong when they were small and you really wanted to know the answer? No. You asked them because you wanted them to understand what they did. So if you have a purpose in it, fine, ask the question. Other than that, it's irrelevant why. They need to be concerned about me. I don't need to be concerned about them. And in order for that to happen, we have to be organized. So in order to do that, first thing we have to do, if you haven't already done this, is understand if you don't get this now, I don't know if you're ever going to get it. This is war, my friends. We're engaged in a warfare. It's a spiritual warfare. It's a political warfare. It's an economic warfare. It's warfare at every level. And you cannot be engaged in this warfare and effectively fight it. I said effectively fight it. That means you're going to come out on the top end unless you first get it straight up here. The Bible says, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. This is what the Bible is talking about. This here, not this here, okay? You don't think with this, you think with this. As a man thinks in his heart, so is he. Get it straight, my friends. It's time to get with the program. You talk to everyone you know, family, friends, strangers, anyone who will listen to you and be able to articulate our message of liberty. And you don't take anything foolish for an answer. You know, I mean, it's like this. We got three categories of people out here. We have the babes. These are the people who they, refer to often as the low information voters. That's a nice way to put it. We have the people here who are the intermediaries. They're the ones that are called the sophomores. You know what that word means? Idiots with knowledge. When a person goes into college and they're freshmen, they don't know anything. Second year, they call them a sophomore. Just enough knowledge to be dangerous, and not in a good way. So, idiots with knowledge. These are typical, and I'm going to tell you how it goes. So, let's say you work at a job, and wherever your gathering time is for your break, you take your break, and 4 or 5 people gather around, and they're talking about whatever the current events are. One person comes there, they know more than everybody else, and whatever they say, everybody else kind of buys into it, and they run out, and they go and share it with all their friends and family as if it's gospel. Am I correct? Is that pretty much how it goes? Yeah, pretty much, huh? Those people are dangerous, okay? And then up here you have the hacks. These are pundits, the politicians, sometimes the preachers, the pulpit pimps, we call them, many of them, okay? These are the ones that's supposed to know everything, and they talk to you as if you are supposed to take their marching orders. My friends, look, the Bible says study, show yourself approved, so workmen need not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth, okay? If you do that, and you get these things, you get organized. When the next year, March next year comes around, it don't matter what the office is. If that elected official who you have petitioned to do what you believe is not doing the job, get organized, find somebody to replace them and do it. And don't be afraid of all of the money that's going to come from elsewhere. That can be overcome because Bob Hall proved that in 2014. Thank you.
And I am so sorry to be rushing you off the stage. We're going to have a quick schedule change because one of our speakers is going to have to leave in just a few minutes. So I am going to skip over. We have an extra priority. This is not one that was voted on by our delegates at state convention, but after the convention, after this past year of the government executive overreach that we saw from our governor regarding our business shutdowns and our mask mandates, our Republican voters let us know that this is a very important issue to them. And so Chairman West has formed a separate committee called the Chairman's Committee on Executive Overreach, and we have asked Congressman Louis Gohmert to please come and speak to us about that. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sorry. Yeah. Well, for those of us who are believers, if you're going to stand up and speak about what's right, there's going to be criticism. It's just, and we were told that, Jesus made clear, they're going to hate you, but remember they hated me first. God gave us this little bubble in history. There's never been a place like America. A New Testament place that believes in the Judeo-Christian values where people have not suffered for being Christians. We're supposed to suffer for Christ's sake, we were told. And yet here was this little bubble. This is an anomaly. It's not something that's occurred before. And as friends from other countries tell me, if you guys lose your freedom, it's not going to happen again. Venezuelans are flooding across the border now. They're trying to get here. And the question comes up, and I've been asking and tweeted out this week, okay, so Venezuelans are coming here because socialism destroyed their country. Where are we going to go when socialism destroys our country? The answer is there is no place to go. And I'm not worried about the church it seems to grow more in persecution than it does when it's got the kind of freedom that we've seen. But it's a dangerous time. And I don't know if y'all saw, they've discovered a new Dr. Seuss book that they may allow libraries to have. It's a little more politically correct these days, but there's a swab in my thingamabob. So anyway, there may be one that they allow to. I'm sorry, I saw that and I couldn't resist. Now, I did not tweet that out, but I texted it to Ted Cruz, and Ted tweeted it out. So anyway, but sometimes you do have to laugh. It's what little sanity I have left. The humor helps out. But well, we talk about executive overreach. We've seen that around the country, and we saw it in the swing states, where either a governor, secretary of state, or even a federal judge or state Supreme Court in Pennsylvania had overreached. And they took power that the U.S. Constitution makes clear has to be in the state legislature. And in fact, it's not executive overreach, but this Congress right now, this year has been involved in legislative overreach every week. They're deciding, like with H.R. 1, that regardless of what the Constitution says about state legislatures having the power over the elections, that they'll just take that power, and because of COVID, why not? It's an emergency, we'll just take it. Well, let me tell you, that's the way the worst power grabs in the world and in history have occurred. Some emergency. Now, the emergency that they're poised and ready to move right into to justify even more overreach is called climate change. And we got into that debate sometime back over the cap and trade bill that the Democrats were pushing. And I was going to be the next speaker after Waxman. And he got up and he pointed to the Republican side and he said, "There's not one single person on your side that even believes in climate change." Well, I'm the next speaker. I get up and I said, well, I'll have to correct the gentleman. Not only do I believe in climate change, I know it's an absolute fact. In East Texas, where I'm from, we have it 4 times a year. I know it's real. So anyway, and other than the burst pipes and the loss of electricity and water, this is the first time I've ever taken buckets of water set by the tank in my toilet. That's, but it's better than having to go to an outside outhouse with the snow everywhere. But anyway, we just adapt. We do our best, and we learn some lessons. And I was asking Wayne Christian a couple of days ago, do we even need an ERCOT? They don't produce a single watt of electricity, but they get paid. But why couldn't we have used that money that ERCOT gets paid to winterize our plants like was suggested 10 years ago? Or there was a report said that's what we got to do. So somebody wasn't watching what they should have been. And that's why I'm going, do we even need them? The Public Utilities Commission used to oversee them. But it just seems like too many times people are so busy overreaching their authority that they forgot to take care of what they were supposed to do, appointed to do, or elected to do. And you've seen it already in Washington. Biden set a record. Didn't y'all ever see Blazing Saddles? And I'm told that's politically incorrect. I really like Mel Brooks. He was making fun of racism. And one of the best ways to get rid of something that's bad is to make fun of it. And once you start making fun of something that's bad, it's a little easier to get rid of. That's what Mel Brooks was doing. But Mel Brooks was the governor, and Biden, I just think about that scene, Biden in the place of Mel Brooks, and his assistant, Harvey Korman, just keeps putting paper in front of him. Work, 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 work. He doesn't know what he's signing. He's just signing everything they put in front of him. And I know there were some of us that thought, okay, well, Pelosi gave us reason to think this. You know, you remember last year she had a bill that would make it easier to declare the president incompetent and give the power to the vice president. And she said at the time, that's not for this term. She was preparing for the next term. And so a lot of us thought, you know, they're not going to let Biden get too far into this year before they're going to use the 25th Amendment and move him out. Whether that was true or not, I think whoever it is that's, you know, telling him what to do, telling him what to sign, I think they've realized, wait a minute, Kamala Harris could be a loose cannon. We don't know. But this guy will sign anything we put in front of him. Maybe we're better off just having somebody, he doesn't know what's going on, but he's signing whatever you put in front of him. Did you see the video of him? He's approaching Marines, and he's told in his ear, salute the Marines, and he gets to them and says, salute the Marines. You know, he thought he was supposed to stay it instead of do it. But anyway, you see those little tells. I mean, for heaven's sake, you can find the video. He tells the Marines, salute the Marines. No, you idiot, you were supposed to salute them. But anyway, so just think about that. Mel Brooks, when you see him, work, 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 work. But the trouble is, it's gotten so serious. And you've heard earlier, I mean, when a father tells you, and I'd read about that, Walter Heyer, Heyer. I've interviewed him when I was doing Hannity's show and Point of View before. He felt like he was a woman in a man's body, and he had the surgery, became a woman, tried to kill himself a couple of times, became a Christian, wanted to be what God made him, a man, and went back. And that man is so full of love and compassion. He's one of the sweetest, kindest people I've ever met, talked to. He spends his time counseling people that are thinking about doing the things he did. The best, and let me just refer you to an article. You could write down this name, Paul McHugh, M-C-H-U-G-H. And I've interviewed him before, but then Johns Hopkins, he's the dean emeritus or the director emeritus of Johns Hopkins Psychiatric Department. And he wrote an article, I think it was 4 years ago, published, I believe, in the Wall Street Journal and other places. But you look for an article from Dr. Paul McHugh. He explains to give a young child hormone blockers is child abuse. And he makes, I think the last paragraph of his article, he points out, you can do surgery on a man to give him the physical characteristics of a woman. And when you do, he's a man with physical characteristics of the body. You cannot change a man to a woman or a woman to a man. You can just take a woman or man, make them into the opposite sex. And I kind of believe, you know, when we're told God created them man and woman. And let me you all heard of Kwesi Mfume. He's in Congress now. He was the head of the NAACP for, I think, 6 years. Been in Congress before that. His office is on my hall, and we arrived at the elevator last week, and I bet his wife had seen me talking about marriage and the Equality Act because, you know, it was Moses that said, a man shall leave his father and mother, and a woman leave her home, and the two will become one flesh. And then Jesus was asked about it. He says, he quotes Moses verbatim, word for word, and then adds something Moses didn't say. He adds, and what God has joined together, let no one separate. And then the Apostle Paul comments, and he quotes Moses verbatim. But Kwesi and I arrived at the elevator at the same time, and there was a mess at the end of his time at the NAACP. He's remarried and apparently a strong Christian from what he was telling me, but he said, my wife called me last week, and after you spoke on the floor, and said, Kwesi, that man's got a heart for the Lord. Do you know him? He said, yeah, we're on the same hall. We're hall neighbors. But anyway, I said, you couldn't give me a better compliment than that. I'd asked him if he was a believer, and he is a believer in Jesus Christ. But it's amazing. There's so many people that profess, the things I believe, and then they pass this legislation that will destroy this place. It's not a mystery what destroys a place. There have been other republics, none as great as ours. But when people in power start wanting more power, and there's nothing that creates more damage than an executive or a judge who thinks, I love these people, I love this place, I'm going to make it better because I'm going to take power I'm not supposed to have and fix things. It's what Biden is doing right now, and he is doing so much damage. Jeff Landry is the Attorney General of Louisiana, and he and I talk. He was in Congress with me. He's terrific. I got a call from one of the president's close assistants a few years ago. He said, you know Jeff Landry? I said, yeah, I love the guy. And he said, well, the president's thinking about getting his help, but he was one of the first people to support President Trump. So anyway, they got Jeff involved, but he is the president, as I understand, of the Republican Governors Association. And one of his things, and one of the things he's tried to do with that organization of attorneys general, is to make sure states don't have executive overreach. And so there were some folks that had put together an idea for a lawsuit. A state that did not have any executives or judges change dates or extend dates, have them file a lawsuit against swing states where somebody besides the legislature changed the law. And the allegation would be these states are disenfranchising our state because they didn't have the state legislature make these changes. And Jeff said, and we can't use your state because you've had executives change some deadlines and dates. It's not, so if Paxton filed it, it would end up probably losing at the end because they would say, well, you did the same thing you're suing these other states for. So we were talking about having South Carolina, they had clean hands, and other states, some other states that had not had somebody besides the legislature change dates and expand the election. And anyway, apparently our Attorney General, I've always liked Ken. He's a believer. He's a good guy, but it's a mess right now. And he came under fire for some things. So what do you do when you come under fire? You take some action that'll get you a lot of good publicity. He filed a suit, and it got thrown out. But I'm telling you, if it had been allowed to go forward, it would have been likely that we'd gotten to the end. And they said, wait a minute, your state did the same thing these other states did. You're suing. You've got no standing. You've got no claim here. But he jumped in and filed it. People that had worked for him said, they didn't even know he was going to file it. But anyway, I've also been disappointed. In December of 2018, there was plenty of evidence to show that there had been fraud in the Dallas election, in the primary and the general election. And that was provided to the Attorney General, and there were some indictments last year, but they weren't for the big fraud and I thought we had a chance to be the heroic state for the country if we'd used that information, gotten warrants, seized the computers, seized the voting machines, then maybe we could have stopped the fraud that was coming in 2020. Not all of it, because they used a lot of old school things, dead people voting and people voting multiple times. But there was fraud. And those of you that have ever been involved in litigation, it takes more than 2 months to get to the bottom of an issue. And there just wasn't enough time to get to the bottom, gather the evidence. And so the left was able to intimidate people and say, this is crazy. And they, they didn't want you on Fox News, Newsmax. I love Newsmax and OAN, others, but they didn't want you talking about fraud. So it's kind of tough to clean up some of these areas where there's been fraud, there's been overreach, but somebody's got to speak up. In my case, many years ago, I heard the song, I love the song by Michael Card, God's Own Fool, and he's talking about Jesus. It seems that I imagined him all of my life as the wisest of all of mankind. But if God's holy wisdom is foolish to man, he must have seemed out of his mind. We in our weakness believed we were strong. He became helpless to show we were wrong. We in our foolishness thought we were wise. He played the fool and he opened our eyes. So we follow God's own fool, because only the foolish can tell. To be beyond believable, can be a fool as well. And so I'm not afraid of being called a fool. I grew up in Mount Pleasant, and everywhere I've ever gone, I've gotten academic awards, and that includes college and law school. And so I'm quite comfortable. I know how well I did on national testing. I'm quite comfortable in who and what I am. And people can call me the dumbest guy in Congress. I keep encouraging them, can't you come up with a better adjective than dumb? Is that the extent of your vocabulary? Could you give me maybe 3 syllables or something? Give me a better adjective, would you please? But we have got to be confident in what we know and what we believe. It's solid. It has made this country, the things that are our foundational beliefs have made this country the greatest country, more opportunities, more assets per person. Solomon's Israel did not have the kind of opportunities and assets for individuals that America has provided. And it has never been perfect, but it has continued to move until more recently. But as you've already heard, the executive overreach, I would have to include that in the courts. My gosh, John Roberts, that man, and I think he was pretty much on track until the Obama administration persuaded him to change at the last minute on the ruling of Obamacare. One of the worst. I mean, Dred Scott, in my mind, will always be the worst opinion ever by the Supreme Court. But that was one of the things that the Obama administration used. And I said to Scalia had told me, they were getting a lot of push from behind the scenes not to reverse Obamacare, that there'd be tens of millions of people lose their insurance and die, and it would all be Robert's fault, and so that he would go down in history as the most political Chief Justice since Taney and Dred Scott. And I said, where was that push coming from behind the scenes? You guys are not supposed to be reachable for stuff like that. He said, well, you can imagine. Well, I do imagine that it was somebody's that President Obama appointed. And we have got to hold people accountable. On the courts, they're not above the law. They shouldn't be above the law. But nobody, there's a few of us that are considered crazy that say we need to bring these judges to account, have them come in and testify, explain why they usurped power the Constitution didn't give them. And people didn't want to do that. Our prior chairs of the judiciary, a couple of them I thought the world of, but they didn't want to rock the boat. So often chairs are the ones, they're given the position because they promise they won't rock the boat. They'll just kind of get along to go along, follow Sam Rayburn's old line. But somebody said earlier, we're over the cliff. You said, yeah. And I hear people say, we're at a crossroads. Oh, no, we passed the crossroad a long time ago. The question is, will we avoid going off the cliff, back off the cliff, and then go up the right road? It's often narrow, but there's just too much. And by the way, the breakdown of Biden's executive overreach just on the social cost of greenhouse gases, getting us back to the Paris Climate Accord, whether it's Paris, Reykjavik, any of the others. Let me tell you, when you hear, and you will, there are 120 or 130 something countries that all say if the United States is not a part of one of those climate accords, it doesn't work. You know why? They're right. Because there's only one country in any of those accords that's supposed to pay every other country. They're going to destroy the goose that's been giving them the golden egg. They want that money just keep coming. Well, they're going to destroy us. There will be, I had somebody yesterday here saying, gee, I used to think running up the deficit was a big problem, but apparently nothing happens. No. That day is coming, and if the dollar were not the international currency, the one you have to buy oil, if it were not the international currency, we would have already had a depression worse than the early 30s. So the day is coming unless we get busy. And I said this on Hannity's TV show one night. It is immoral to spend money the way we are. And I caught a lot of flack for that, but it is immoral. This is the first time that a generation has said, we can't control our spending, so we're just going to leave it to the next few generations to control their spending and pay back everything that we ran up on them. What parents were willing to do that in American history? Well, now we have a bunch that are. And hearing about, what you can't teach your children, you can't say this to your children. Let me tell you, my summer in the Soviet Union as an exchange student, one of the things that chilled me to the bone was being in what we would now call a daycare center, but they move them in there when they're a couple months old. Every child goes because both parents worked. You may just have a 9-foot square area to sweep, but everybody worked. And that it chilled me because this lady that was the director was explaining parents are not the caretaker. They're just temporary caretakers of children. They don't belong to those parents. They belong to the Soviet Union. And so we monitor, we're questioning all the time, we're monitoring anything the children are told, because if we find out they've said anything inappropriate to the children, we yank them out of their home and give them to other couple that would be more deserving and do better teaching them. You ever say anything negative about the Soviet Union, that child's gone. They don't ever not allowed to see them ever again. And so I thought, this was in the 70s, I thought, thank you, God, that we have a country where that is not the case. I didn't think it would ever be the case, but that's where we are. And it will get worse if we don't stand up. And, Bob Hall and I have been talking for a number of years, and it's nice to have people, like the people you've heard here today, that will stand up. They're not afraid of being called names. But, and I'll tell you, people say, gosh, we wish we had more members of Congress like you. Well, the reason I'm in Congress is because I'm just a reflection of what 75% of East Texas thinks. There's nothing special about me, but I reflect what 3/4 of East Texas thinks. The problem is not so much the people that get elected, it's the voters that have sent them. And in many cases, they hear from, we don't want you to stand up. We don't want to be embarrassed by you be calling names. So some of us are much more fortunate than others, but the way we get more members of Congress and more members in the State House and Senate that will stand up like people you've heard today is by voters standing up and speaking. And for those, let me tell you, I've met with Netanyahu a number of times. He's been raked over the coals. I believe he's been treated much like Trump was through the impeachments. It's just wrong what they're trying to do to him and his wife. But I've told him a couple of times that I feel like you have a chance to be one of Israel's great leaders. And on one of those times, Michelle Bachmann said, Louis, he is one of Israel's great. I said, no, I'm talking about the all-time greats, going back to whether David, Solomon, Josiah, Hezekiah, Ben-Gurion, and anyway, but they all shared something. They shared a strong faith in God, and they were willing to stand up for what they knew was right. And they studied the Tanakh, the Old Testament for some of us. But and I said, I really believe you have that. And anyway, we had some further discussion. But the next time, second time I brought it up, he said, well, I doubt you're aware, but I started a Bible study in my home. He said Bible study. I know it's the Old Testament. And I said, you know what? I heard that from some folks here. I can't tell you how thrilled I was. And he said, okay, here's something you haven't heard. My favorite hour every week is when my son comes over and we read and talk about the Bible. And I said, that's fantastic. That is just fantastic. And I obviously didn't know that. He said, yes, my favorite hour every week. So I think God's at work in the leadership there, which is why I think there are people trying to destroy that man the way they tried to destroy President Trump. We got to stand up. And, we're so fortunate here, but since we have so many people that think right, we need to make sure, people tell me, tell Trump, well, he called me last week, but just send him a note, snail mail, whatever. They may ban your email, but you can get him a message, and it means the world. He hears people still believing, and maybe he should not give up the fight. So anyway, thank you for allowing me to be part of this today. I've enjoyed hearing the other speakers. I do need to get down the road, but thank you so much. I love you guys. Thank you for letting me represent you.
Awesome job. I appreciate you. Thank you, Congressman. I appreciate you so much. All righty. In the interest of time, I'm going to ask my next two speakers, and I can do this to you guys because you're my fellow SREC. We do have two more quick legislative priorities, and then Senator Bob Hall is going to wrap it up for us. So really quickly, if Charles, are you next? Oh, no, Rhonda. Rhonda, you are next. If you don't mind, just keep it to the party and a little update, and that's it. Thank you.
I'll be very brief, but I do have to tell a fun story. I'm in Longview because of Louis Gohmert. So I lived in Ohio, and I was watching C-SPAN. I'm a political junkie like that, and I heard the best Texas twang ever, and I'm like, where is this guy from? And so it came down to either Louisiana and Texas, and I told my husband I don't speak the language in Louisiana, so we ended up in Longview, and I picked that so Louis could be my congressman. So I'm here today to talk to you about the School Choice for All, and up here you can see what it's about. And I have a son that's in the 10th grade. He's 16. He just got his driver's license, so please pray for me. One thing we've learned as parents during the COVID lockdown is that school choice is essential. Two things I learned from the lockdown is, one, I'm not a homeschool parent, and two, I'm not smarter than a 10th grader. We also learned that we know what's best for our kids, not the government, and that Texas is blessed to have some of the best homeschool laws on the books. In East Texas, we're fortunate that our educators understand the importance of having our kids back in school. There's schools still in Texas that are not open, and there's some that just recently opened, and it was because the parents had to battle to get it done. So we need to get good legislation on the books in Texas that allows our taxpayer money to follow the child if your school is closed. You have the option of enrolling your kids in different districts if that school is closed. We have the luxury of doing that here locally. A lot of kids in Longview live in Spring Hill District, or they go to Hallsville. So we know what that's about in East Texas. The Democrats definitely want to control our education system in America, and we're not exempt from that in Texas. So there's going to be some education bills that we're going to have to kill this legislative session, and we need to fight hard to preserve our conservative values in our district. Even if you don't have kids in school or grandkids in school, still take advantage of following this information. Your tax dollars are at play here. So I'll end with that. Thank you for allowing me to speak on this.
Thank you, Rhonda. And really quickly, I will ask Dr. Blankenship to come on back. And you were just going to say a word or two about banning taxpayer-funded lobbying, and we'll wrap it up. Yep.
Very quickly, there have only been 4 bills filed for banning taxpayer-funded lobbying. Up front, I thought that was a good idea, but I am getting information from other communities that they have some concerns about completely doing away with lobbying. I heard some things today about we need to continue lobbying, but not using taxpayer-funded way of doing it. I need to hear from you. My role basically is to be your voice with the Republican Party, and I need to hear from you. Otherwise, we can't work with our priorities without hearing from you, and I need to hear from you about, especially about the lobbying industry. Okay?
Thank you. And I will add to that, because that was a great point. We do have a bill that we're supporting by Representative Mays Middleton that actually is an excellent bill. And there is some misconception that some of the smaller rural areas think that it could hurt them. But Representative Middleton has built in some things to that bill so that it actually won't. So we're hoping to get more information about that, because I know that this is kind of a tough priority. You guys, thank you so much for coming here today. We want to tell you from the party that we're doing our strategy a little bit different this legislative session. In the past, we have tried to ourselves spend more time at the Capitol and work with our representatives and senators about getting things passed. And were we very successful last session? We weren't. We really weren't. We had 5 priorities, and we didn't get any of them passed in full. So this time around, we're taking a different tactic, and today is evidence of that. We are taking the case to the people, and we're letting you know what the issues are, what our priorities are as a party, and then we're letting you know what you can do. Who can tell me the website for the Texas RPT? Who knows it? Dot what? You, sir, get a Trump hat. You got it correct. It's texasgop.org. That is correct. And on that website, we have added a drop-down menu with all kinds of information for this legislative session. All right, who can tell me what the drop-down menu name is? Anybody know that? Who said that? Who said that? Oh my goodness. All right, you get the other hat. It is hashtag, would you throw, here, there you go. It is hashtag TextLeg. If you go to hashtag TextLeg, click on that, there's a drop-down menu. Anybody getting my legislative priority reports? Oh, awesome. Okay. If you're not, you can sign up for my Texas or for my legislative priority reports. We have something called the STAT email, which is the Strategic Texas Activist Team. And if you've got particular priorities that you're really passionate about, like banning abortion or constitutional carry, you can get specific emails about those bills when they hit committee, when they're going to go to a vote on the floor. Hopefully we are going to get them to a vote on the floor, right? And so we're going to give you information about when to call, when to send emails, when to go down to Austin if you want to do that and testify, and we really hope you will. So please go to the website. We do have one other aid for you. It's our digital guide, and it will give you talking points for each one of the legislative priorities. So if you're not sure what to say when you call or email, we even help you out. We've got a little form for that. So I am going to turn it over to Senator Bob Hall to close us out today. Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you, Jill. Thank you, Troy. And I want to commend y'all for being here. You had a choice today. You didn't have to come here, but you did. But that wasn't a mistake. You're not here by mistake, because God doesn't make mistakes. And I don't know what it is you will take away from here, but you'll take away something that you'll use sometime. Whether it may not even be have been better. We'd sold our business, we'd retired. We were going to go do mission work. We were qualified with the Texas Baptist Men's Unit for Disaster Feeding and the Southern Baptist Disaster Feeding Unit. We went on missions with them. I'm a pilot, I have an airplane, and I volunteered with Angel Flight. If you know what that is, it's where pilots with airplanes fly people who cannot afford to or should not be in a commercial airline. And that's what we were going to go do. And I went to a Tea Party meeting. First one in Van Zant County. And what's really interesting was the speaker that night was talking about something I'd never heard of before, never thought about before. But he was speaking from a book called The 5,000-Year Leap. Anybody read that book? Anybody? Okay. I just finished it for the third time. And I'll read it again. I assure you of that. It is so rich in information about what our country is all about, how it came about to be, and what we owe to those that went before us. Because we do owe them. Because if it wasn't for the blood of our warriors that had been spilled so we could be here, we would not be here. But that book just got it started. And it's got my interest up. But then it wasn't later that somebody handed me a copy of Tom Brokaw's book called The Greatest Generation. Now, that greatest generation was my father, my uncle, my grandfather, my grandmother, the folks who lived through the Depression, took on the two mightiest armies in the world, went both directions from here. They didn't have iPhones when they left, folks, and they didn't know when they were coming back. They had weapons left over from World War I and had no clue what they were really going to go do. But we went, the American people turned to, women came out of the kitchen into the factory and built bombs and tanks and airplanes. We had rationing. The whole country was behind it. And when it was all over with, for the first time in the history of the world, biggest fight ever, and we did not conquer anyone. We did not conquer them. We liberated the people from a tyrannical governments that each one of them had. And we went and used our money to rebuild their countries so they would have liberty. That's who we are as Americans. In that generation, we had God in our schools, God in our government, God in our courts, God in our homes, God in our churches. And look at us now. Government's gone from God's gone from our government, gone from our schools, gone from our courts. They're trying to take it out of our churches, and they sure want to take it out of our homes. We didn't have much debt, and look at what we have in debt now. Teen pregnancy was almost unheard of. It's an epidemic these days. Drug use didn't exist, and it's an epidemic this day. Folks, my generation is about to be remembered, and I see some of you sitting here that are of my generation, as the first generations of America to leave the country worse than we inherited it. And that's when I decided I'm not going to do this. God had blessed me beyond anything I ever deserved. In fact, I've said if I knew I was going to live this longer, I'd have behaved myself more when I was younger. But it is what it is. And so got busy in the Tea Party and started working to get people elected. After a period in which we did a lot of protesting on the issues. And one day some of us got together and said, we wouldn't have these issues if we had righteous people in office. That's what Benjamin Franklin said. Our country's form of government only works with the righteous people. So we got busy and started trying to elect people, and we did. We were successful in 2010, 2012. A lot of people in the House changed the House in here in Texas from being very liberal to being much more conservative than what it was. And it came around the next election, and our senator next door, Senate District 2, from over here, was ranked as the most liberal Republican in Texas. But nobody knew it because nobody paid attention to what people did when they went to Austin. And that's one of the problems we have today. How many of you have actually, when you got ready to go down to the polls to vote, called somebody and said, who should I vote for? Literally. Folks, we can't do that. You need to vet these people. You need to pay attention to what they do. And once they're elected, you need to pay attention to what they're doing down there. But anyway, they didn't know what he was doing, but the Tea Party knew, and we knew. And so I spent 2 years trying to find somebody to run against him. Talked to everybody I thought was a credible candidate to run. Nobody would do it. So my wife, Kay, who had been political before I was, we talked about it and said, for a time such as this, if not us, who? And if not now, when? And we prayed about it. Now, if she was here today, she would stick her hand up and say, yeah, but I was praying, God, don't let him go do this. Please don't let him go do this. But we did. And we ended up getting elected. Now, it turned out that my opponent's number one bill was SB 300, which was a bill that would have codified the hospital's right to terminate your life if they decided to when you went to the hospital, and get coverage for it, legal coverage to be able to do it. Pull the plug on the respirator anytime they wanted to. Well, that got talked about a lot during the campaign, and when the election was over with, we won by exactly 300 votes. A little over 30,000 cast, and we won by exactly 300 votes. And several people called me and said, the Gideon win. The Gideon win. Remember, Gideon showed up with over 30,000 men, and God says, I'll let you use that. You'll think you won. I'm going to show you that I was in charge. And that's when I realized that I truly had been called to do this. And I made one commitment, and that is I would go to God every day on my knees and pray for his wisdom, his courage, and his strength to do his will. And I would go and do what I said I was going to do. Whether it got me reelected or not, I was there to keep my promise of doing what I said I was going to do, to protect our liberties, to protect what we have here that is given to us by our Constitution. And so that's what we have to do going forward. Now, as I said, things don't just happen by accident. A couple of months ago, I was at a meeting in Van Zandt County, and a young man that I'd known off and on for quite a while came to me and said, I've got something for you. And he said, and I said, what's that, Bobby? He said, I met a man from Rockwall at a book fair in Tennessee who's written a book, and he said he wanted me to give you a copy of his book. I said, okay. Now, when he handed it to me, I looked at it, looked at the title. It wasn't a book I would have ever picked up and read. It was entitled Beyond the Golden Door. Now, the interesting thing, it was written by, like I said, he now lives in Rockwall. His name is Ali Masters. He was born a Pakistani Muslim, adopted by a wealthy family, sent to Texas to go to school, went to school in Texas here, real playboy, had a good time initially, and then he met a Christian woman, and his life changed. He accepted Jesus Christ as his Savior, went on to have a very successful business and a family. But in his book, I was compelled to read it just because the circumstance of it being given to me. I didn't realize this till I'd read it. But in it, he had one of the most profound statements I had ever read anywhere that just resonated with me. And that's when he said, Americans do not appreciate liberty because they've never been without it. Think about that, folks. Never been without it. We don't appreciate what it is. And it's being, as Louis Gomer said, it is slowly being drained away from us. We are the frogs in the water, and it's starting to boil. And our liberties are disappearing, coming and going. And we've got generations behind us that set us up for what we have here today to enjoy. You can go all the way back to the founding of America was for the liberty of religion, for what they wanted to worship. The Pilgrims that came over here that on the Mayflower in their compact. 3 times they talk about God in there and being here to worship God. And then 150-something years later, in the Declaration of Independence, made it very clear what they were here for. It said, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with the certain inalienable rights that are among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's what they were giving us. That's what they were putting together. And at the end of it, they wrap it up by saying, and for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. And folks, they paid the price. And we have people today that won't even give up a round of golf, a game of tennis, or a card game to show up to a meeting to learn what they need to know to keep us on track with protecting our liberties. And we're going to lose them if we don't. But it didn't stop there. Went on a few years later when we got the Constitution. It says, we the people, not us the leaders, not those people in charge, but we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, those who are going to come after us. Do ordain and establish the Constitution of the United States of America. Folks, they were pledging it all. We the people, that means we are all part of the government. It's not just the people you put in office. We're all part of it. And freedom is not free. I love Ronald Reagan, what he had to say when he said freedom is not free. And freedom is never more than one generation from extinction. We don't pass it on in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. Or one day, we will spend our sunset years telling our children and our grandchildren what it was like to live in the land of the free. Because if we lose freedom here in Texas, where are we going to go? And we have bills down there right now that are designed to strip us of a significant amount of our freedom right here in Texas, not to mention what's going on in Washington. But where do we go? California? Michigan? Cuba? No. But this is Texas. And 185 years ago, The Texans at San Jacinto, they had lost battle after battle after battle. And they awoke one morning, April 21st, in 1836, where they camped. They camped with a river to their right and a swamp behind them and to their left. And the Mexican army, twice their size, coming right at them, and had stopped just short and decided, well, it was the middle of the day, they need to take a siesta. They had nowhere to go. And so what did they do? They did like my good friend Alan West said when he was running for Congress the first time down in Florida. It's time to fix bayonets. And when you fix bayonets, folks, it's time for the fighting to get real up close and personal. But they fixed bayonets and charged the enemy, and in 17 minutes, Texas was an independent nation. They killed or captured every one of the Mexican soldiers. And they did it because they didn't quit. They had lost battle after battle after battle, but they did not quit. They stuck with it. Now, I don't know, do you understand? We are in a fight. We are in a fight for our liberty, for our country, and for the principles on which it was founded. And I don't know what you plan to do, but I plan to stay in this fight. I stand to stay in this fight to protect those principles of liberty. If I get knocked down, I'll get up again. If I get knocked down 10 times, I'm going to get up again. But I'm going to fight to protect what we have for our children and our grandchildren. I will not back up, back down, backslide, compromise, cave, collapse. I will fight with every fiber in my body till the last warm breath leaves my cold, stiff body. And I hope you will join me in that fight. God bless America, God bless Texas, and God bless you.